editor. As we share with you each time we do this, the Voice and Viewpoint is San Diego's oldest and only African American publication. In print, we're serving 89 zip codes, 17 cities, unincorporated areas of San Diego County. We are available single copy sales, retail outlets, over the counter, churches, schools, libraries, and all the places that you might want to look, as well as you may download our app in the Google or Apple store and follow us because we're on 7 social media platforms. And so we're excited to have this opportunity. This is an interactive thing. And this evening, not only am I joined by my co-host for this, Dr. Leonard Thompson, Jr. the third, getting those endings messed up here. But we have with us our managing editor, Miss Latanya West. We are all here fresh off of our 12th annual Voice and Viewpoint Gala, which was a tremendous success. And if you were not able to be there, you may now follow it on our website. And the entire program is there, and you can see what you missed. And hopefully you will start making plans in advance to be with us next year. So this evening, we're going to devote our time. We're going to talk, since we're celebrating Black History Month. I always like to find it interesting that Black History Month is the shortest month in the year. When Carter G. Woodson started this back in 1926, I think it was Negro History Week. And then he created the Journal of Negro History, which is still published today by what was the Society for the Study of Negro Life and History, which has updated its brand to the Association of African American Life and History. And this year's theme from the association standpoint is African Americans and Labor. And so we have a great deal to talk about. I'd like to hand the mic off first to Dr. Thompson and then to Ms. West as we hear from them and begin to get into what we hope will be a very interesting discussion.
Well, good evening, everyone. So happy to be with you all this evening. Dr. Warren, I'm just elated off of the heels of a very successful gala where everybody worked so collectively together. We've been together for quite some time, but one of the things that I'm very excited about is the support that we had from the whole entire team to make it happen. And again, the managing editor, it was probably one of the most exciting galas because there were so many great announcements that were made. And with that, I'm going to pitch it over to the managing editor and say, again, job well done.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Thompson. Yeah, we were just so excited because we have some big announcements regarding our website and exciting updates for that and rebrand and just things that we can offer all of you as you visit our site. So very excited. And we mentioned that and debuted that at the gala. And it was just such a great event, wasn't it? I mean, just so positive and everyone seemed to enjoy themselves. And it was definitely a team effort. Could not have done it without the wonderful team that we have, including Mandate Records as our production team. So just really happy about that. And thank you all of those of you who came out to support.
A sellout event once again.
Yes, yes.
Well, we started off with history, which was important. The Buffalo Soldiers. We made it an educational evening. That was important. Of course, my heart-wrenching favorite is always the Balm of Gilead, Lift Every Voice and Sing, with that history of black folks and leaders, so many of whom I've had the pleasure of knowing. But Latanya talked about the transformative aspect, and I don't think people really will get it for a while until it kicks in because there's so much to it. But at the same time that I'm thinking about that, I'm reminded that this week, I want to call it a mini documentary. Our staff has put together a mini documentary video on the whole issue in the Encanto community versus developers. Mm-hmm. And it is quite profound in terms of the residents, people's homes, the streets, targeting all of the attack being done on that community. And one of the most disturbing things is and it's not in this particular documentary, but the materials that are coming forth that suggest that the former city council member and the present council member for District 4, who was chief of staff then, that we know for a fact, we have it in writing, that the two of them signed off on footnote 7 to allow what's taking place. And even though the footnote's been removed, it doesn't stop the developers and it doesn't stop all of the overpopulating projects that are on the board, which will totally change that community and in effect ghettoize what was once a jewel in San Diego. And so where's it going to be placed initially, Tanya? The video that Macy and Tahoot?
The ADU video, it's going to be on both our website and YouTube.
Okay, and I think that if you're concerned about what's happening in San Diego, you really want to see this particular item.
Very educational.
Yes.
And it covers the breadth of that community, which is very diverse, and they definitely have a voice. We highlight their voice and their concerns. So very, very good video to watch.
And one of the things, because you all do news bites on a almost on a daily basis, but I think that if we can put that link in one of the news bites,
Definitely,
it'll forward us to also share it on much more links. I think that it's important that once you see it, that you then share it on your different pages, so that we get as much traffic being driven, so that we can make sure the story is being told. Again, we know this is not just story, but this is very personal, because we know so many people that are going to be affected, are community members that will be affected by this overpopulation of an area, and that is going to be, when we talk about Black history, we got to realize that ghettos and lower income has driven down the property values when they overpopulate, and then they overpopulate but under-resourced. And that's what's getting ready to take place. They're overpopulating southeastern San Diego, and they're under-resourcing it with no stores and infrastructure to actually support the overpopulation. And so then it becomes, for lack of better words, a declining area.
Yes. I remember
No,
just
go ahead.
recounting to Dr. Warren the other day, I had gone looking for a new rental unit to rent. And I was near the Skyline area, and I couldn't believe it. This cul-de-sac street, it had so many cars everywhere in every single spot that was available, plus the driveway had like maybe 10, no exaggeration, about 10 cars parked in it. And I thought to myself, wow, the people who bought on this street probably are regretting it now, not realizing this was going to happen to their street, which drives down the value and just the impactness and quality of life.
Well, this is a national phenomenon, and it happens when they don't have homeowner associations for communities. And when you were speaking of that, my wife's old community in the Poconos, we went back to visit where she had a chalet, and it was horrible because without the homeowner's control, people park their cars in the yard, they kill the grass, they're all in the streets, and it's just the homeowners spend time litigating how many vehicles do you have, where can you put them, where can you put your boat, your RV, and all of those kinds of things. And not only, if you want to see what Encanto could become like, just go over into City Heights between 54th Street, if you will, and Euclid, and between El Cajon Boulevard and I would say University, and where they have packed in those African communities that are so tight. You can't even hardly walk in terms of cars, congestion, and the whole thing. All right, and we already know anthropologically that when you do those kinds of things to living species, there are sociological and physiological impacts. We see them, but the people doing it, they don't really care about it. And I think the only thing worse than them not caring is to have elected officials who sell out the people that they're supposed to be representing to get whatever benefits. And I can tell you from studying urban planning, and all of these things for decades, that when these people come, if you look deep enough and far enough, you're going to find somebody who took some money and turned and looked the other way. They always come telling you about how there are going to be more jobs, but they don't tell you the price of the jobs and what the jobs are going to do in terms of the community. And so the message to the community, and this is again online with Black History as we're celebrating, is the community cannot afford to be apathetic, laid back, and say it doesn't concern me. Because when you do decide it concerns you, it's too late. And that's why we're in the crisis that we're in as a nation right now, because historically it has always been known that the masses don't pay attention to details, or they're kept so busy working for low wages and substandard living conditions, doing 2 or 3 jobs, that they don't have time to do the social stuff. And if you want to see how it plays out, just go back and look. We're getting ready to do a series on the salute to the independence of African nations. And one of the things, as you look at the French and the British and all the different people who had ownership interests, when they went into communities, even it was for safari, they hired the people to carry the packages, but they paid them substandard wage. When South Africa got its independence in '95, what happened? It was a paper transaction, but Mandela understood that without the land and the money to go with it, it was meaningless. And so now we're in a situation where the Afrikaners still own 80% of the land that they're talking about as their history, when it was stolen in the first place from the native people who lived there. Just like what's happened here. I mean, they got paintings of Cortez landing on the beach in Mexico and holding up a flag declaring the land belongs to Spain. That's like somebody coming to your house and putting a flag up in your front yard and say your house is now mine, just because I just got here. And so we need to wake up.
Well, I think the one phenomenal thing, and I say this to everybody else, is really about how do you discover and discover something that people are already there.
Right.
Basically, you should be introducing yourself to who's already on the land, and this is our first time visiting, and so we just want to say thank you for letting us know that you exist. What's your land called? But in other words, they said we found it, we saw people that were on it, and we bullied them and killed them and just stole it. And so I think that when we began to look at Black history, when we began to look at where we are right now, the biggest word is that we have to now not only watch and pray, but we have to put our faith into work.
Yes, and speaking of that, Dr. Thompson, and Latanya knows that we're publishing something interesting this week. We're publishing at least the initial list of companies that have decided that they're going to abandon any diversity, equity, inclusion programs. And it's really ironic talking about the titles, because if you notice, when Trump came in, he didn't just go for DEI. He went all the way back to deal with affirmative action in terms of what Johnson started. And affirmative action was never about giving Black people a special deal. Affirmative action started with the Chicago Plan, it was called initially, and it was institutionalized in the Small Business Act, because what happened was that only large companies were able to get government contracts. And they came up with a concept called AA set-asides, setting aside about 10% and ensuring that people could get it. Well, we went through this here in San Diego in the past 25 years. At one point, the Association of General Contractors had 100% of all city contracts. And the people fought, Black contractors, George Stevens folks marched and fought, and they got them down to give up 5% of the contracts. But here was a caveat. The contract didn't mean anything if you couldn't get a bond. And so there was no people giving bonds in small amounts. Then you had to go back and find companies that you could break the whole job down into a small enough unit that someone would put a bond there to make it work. And so when we learned the game, they changed the rules and they expanded. And that's what our purpose here is as a trusted messenger, the guardians. In 1827, Rush Rundum said, nobody can tell our story like we can. So we're going to tell our story. And so here we are 198 years later, and again, we're needed to tell our story because of what's being done to our story.
And he was the publisher
He
of
was
the
the Freedom's
Press.
Journal,
Freedom's Journal, yes.
the first
Black
newspaper in
press.
America, Freedom Journal, African American publication.
And so, again, like you said, Dr. Warren, this is African American History Month, Black History Month, and so much is going on around our community and around the world. So I don't know if you want to start first with what's going on locally and then go nationally, or if we're going to go nationally, internationally, and then come back to local.
I don't know. What do you think, Ms. West?
I always start from the national perspective, and then
Okay. Well, from a national
so much
perspective,
happening.
from a national perspective, we have a great deal going on. Right now, we are experiencing the dismantling of democracy. 250 years about to go down the drain behind a very carefully orchestrated plan to change us from a democracy to an oligarchy. And an oligarchy, for those who think that's a big word, is a situation in which a few people with wealth rule the country in terms of the masses. And if you go back and look at what happened in Germany, you'll see how this plan is being replicated. If you look very closely at the Heritage Foundation, Urban Institute, all of these different think tanks in Washington, they've been there for years. They've been doing what just took place for years. When I was there, I was head of one of those entities on a smaller scale. The first thing we got that was black was the Joint Center for Political Policies and Studies. And the Joint Center was to fill the need for so many of us. And so now what we see taking place is firing of people, violating civil service, ignoring court injunctions, placing the Trump believers in positions without regard for ability or qualifications for what they can do, the effort to blame the masses for whatever's not working. In the past week, we've had 2 weeks, we've had 4 major plane tragedies when we hadn't had anything in years.
Even
And
today in San Diego.
huh?
Even today in San Diego.
Oh, I hadn't heard about
What
that.
happened today?
A military plane crashed into the bay here in San Diego off of Shelter Island. The 2 pilots, I haven't heard how they're doing, but they were rushed to the hospital. But that just happened today, right here in San Diego.
Then that's number 5 in terms of what's taking place.
Well,
And go ahead.
no, I was just going to say, I was as I watched the person who currently occupies the White House and the Oval Office invite this billionaire into the Oval Office to speak to the American people, not being an elected official, and sowing more seeds of doubt on other parts of our whole system. And this person has sowed the seeds, which he started in 2016, of doubt in the press. Now he's doubling down on government, even more so. All our institutions, the whole process. So he's setting it up for this big propaganda, to make people think there's something wrong that he can fix, and it's going to be, very dangerous for our country.
And I also think that we have to hear and really understand the rhetoric and the dialogue. He didn't say that we want to help rebuild Gaza Strip. He said we're going to own Gaza Strip, and we're going to make it a Riviera. Now that is that thinking that is just out of this world. I said today on the air that I am concerned that even with Elon Musk, if you always notice that Elon Musk actually always has that little boy with him.
Yeah.
I'm really wondering if that's a little AI and that's not a real kid, and they actually had that kid there so he can then spy and get things. They be like, oh, he's so cute, but he's actually collecting data. I think that the dignity of the office of the president, the dignity of the White House seems to be all off the charts. And you cannot tell me you want to make America great, but you have foreigners now having the greatest impact in making all these decisions, and you're giving them all this access. I actually believe that the Donald Trump administration and the Republicans are literally undermining, like Dr. Warren said, the democracy, and actually are trying to collapse America
Oh,
versus
yeah.
to make America
Well, they
great
tried to
again.
do it before. They just didn't know how exactly. And they've had all this time to get themselves ready. And all we need to do is pick up Project 2025, myself included, and read it word for word, because I've definitely glanced at the thing. But it's all there. They have their plan. And it's,
Well, let me make it even easier for you to follow because some people are just beginning to see what I'm about to say. And a few weeks ago, I did an editorial called Our Response to Project 2025. Here's how the plan works. And this comes from contracting, it comes from bean counters and actuaries. In the world of where you have recalls for automobiles, so many times the item that comes up for recall, they already knew about it. But the bean counters did a statistical model of how many of these things were going to really show up, how many people would probably die as a result of it, how much would it actually cost to settle those claims in comparison to how much it would cost to recall all those vehicles and to repair the claims. And so then it's decided that the death ratio and the wrongful death payout is cheaper than correcting the problem. So what's happened in this situation from 2025 is, what have they done? Inspector generals had to go, all right? They got to have people in key positions. They got to have the Department of Justice, because the Department of Justice is the one that has to move like it did before in terms of people indicted by Congress for contempt. They end up in the Department of Justice, and that's part of putting them in prison. So now we got to have control of all three branches. We've got the executive and the legislative. What they don't know is that they're not going to get control of the judicial without some violence. And in other countries where they've tried to get rid of the Supreme Court, Netanyahu ran into this before this event happened because he tried to overdo the Constitution and remove judges so that he couldn't be indicted and go to jail. And so the October 7th, we found that he knew about October 7th's potential all the way back in July beforehand. But it was serving his purpose.
and ignored the soldiers,
ignored
the
it.
female soldiers
And
who were
he-
watching it right over
And
the
they
border.
saw it. And so here's where I'm showing you the history comes into play. In Rome, the Caesar only had power under martial law that overrode the Senate. But whenever a crisis was declared that brought martial law, it could only last for 6 months. So every 6 months he had to find a new war and a new problem to nullify the Senate. And so now, as of today, with Tulsi Gabbard being put as director of intelligence, she has 18 units under her: Secret Service, Homeland Security, FBI, all of these elements. If Congress, as the courts now, as the third element, cites these people for contempt, and the White House has said to hell with what the courts say, now who's going to enforce it? Okay? And then you got Hagler there as over defense, and he sure as hell is necessary because without him, you cannot have the military on civilian soil acting because Congress and the Constitution prohibits the way it's set up. So they've moved all the obstacles to what they really want to do when it comes down. And they've already anticipated the frustration and the anger, but the people are going to be so lockstep. And the Senate is not going to wake up in time to make any significant difference. And so the Bertha item, he knew that you couldn't alter the 14th Amendment born on the soil, but that was to get the matter to the Supreme Court, hoping that the Supreme Court would overrule the 14th Amendment and make that declaration. And while we're at the 14th Amendment, let's go back and look at the 13th and the 15th. Matter of fact, let's go back and take a look at all them freedoms that we've given, okay? And it is under the 14th Amendment, whether or not you know it, that a corporation is declared a legal person under the 14th Amendment, okay? And so we have all of this working, and it's working against America because what's happened? If we go back 50 or 60 years in this country, we stopped teaching meaningful government. We start teaching a watered down concept of civics. When you and I came along, we could identify not only the 50 states on a blank map, but we could fill in the capital of a city in each of those states. Today, they don't even know what states are where.
Yeah.
They don't even know what a map looks like. You and I could write. Today, you can't even write cursor. You got to print your name.
Well, the
So-
map is changing because in my map it said Gulf of Mexico.
Yeah, and now it's Gulf of America. Okay.
And here's my question, and this is what's really baffling to me is how can one person come in and change whole maps and global? You know, is this just Google and said, okay, we're changing to Gulf of America? How do you just claim that the Gulf is going to change and don't anybody challenge it?
Oh, but see, this is where history is important, all right? Because most of us just look at the map of the U.S. and take stuff for granted. Let's not forget to take a deep look at the Louisiana Purchase, okay? And the Louisiana Purchase, who did it come from? France. We got all of that, and what we didn't get from France, we took from Mexico under the Treaty of Hidalgo in 1848. New Mexico, parts of Texas, all of California, all of this land. And what did we do when we took that land? This is what's so important about what he wants to do with Greenland. Because when we took Mexico's property under the Treaty of Hidalgo, we nullified the Spanish land grants that had been given by the king to the Dons and the big haciendas. So if you ever saw a Zorro movie, his family was one of those that had property, and those things came as grants from the king. Those grants were nullified the same way we took the land from the Indians when we did the Oklahoma land rush. What did we take? All that property that belonged to the Sioux and all of the Indians out there. Okay, y'all line up, and wherever you park your wagon, that's yours now. Okay, just file a claim. So history is repeating itself on a more sophisticated level. And because most people no longer own land or understand the true value of land, it's becoming an easier takeover than it would have been otherwise. Why'd y'all let me do all of this, sir?
Well, you know, I'm just gonna go and just jump in. You know, and I want to, since it's Black History Month, I want to talk about the black jobs and the black people that supported Trump that did not get any jobs. Can we talk about that? You know, we'll start off with Tim Scott.
Well,
I have no words.
Well, Tim Scott was never really black. He just thought he was, okay? Because if you look at Tim Scott, and nothing is worse than seeing a black man grapple and crawl and is still getting pat on the head, getting kicked in the behind. First of all, he would have never been in the Senate if it hadn't been for Nikki Haley, who as governor appointed him because the governor appoints vacancies in terms of the Senate. And he turned on Nikki. Well, what did Trump offer him? Nothing.
Nothing.
He's not, and he thought that by sucking up, he might even get a chance to be black president. Trump wasn't going to make no poor black man who was so happy that he had come up from the plantation ascend to that position. It wasn't going to happen. So what about him? Wherever he's getting what he deserves.
Well, you know, which was really, really sad to me is the amount of African American men that supported Trump and thought that he was the panacea. And as many people that are saying that, you know, that black people are going to suffer under the regime of Donald Trump, and I do call it a regime, I would venture to say that Caucasian and lower and middle class whites and lower class whites are going to suffer even greater because, again, the welfare system is heavily populated with more Caucasian people than there are black or Mexican.
But you know what I think? I think the people that support him as diehard supporters, they will turn it around and blame it on the Democrats, Biden, Kamala. They'll do anything but accept the reality right in front of their faces. That's how much of what I call it a cult, to be honest. They just, and they're so backed up against the wall with fear for not being in power. They can't think straight. It's sad.
Well, here's a perfect example of what you're talking about. The tariffs that Trump wants to impose on China will affect agriculture. And agriculture is significant because that will also affect Mexico, especially the avocado market, which now the cartel controls much of the avocado market, which it didn't before because it's just so lucrative. And so what we find happening from the standpoint of all of this taking place is that the American farmers who were shipping their soybeans overseas, the price has dropped. I think it was like $2 initially. And back in 2000, when Trump was in before, and he started part of this, the price went down because of the effort at tariffs, but the government gave subsidy to the farmers. Now the farmers are saying, look, the subsidy is not going to help us. We are still going to lose overall, okay? But even though we're going to lose overall, this is what just hit me when I heard the head of their little group say, we are still going to support the president because he has a great idea and what he's doing, and we might have to suffer a little bit, but it's going to make all the difference in the world, so we're going to stay with it. The bottom line is racism is greater than the desire for democracy, national survival, or unity. I don't care how you cut it. You don't need Sigmund Freud at the table. It's all about race. I'm threatened. These brown and black and funny looking people are coming in here, and the next thing you know, what? It's not make America great again. They don't mean MAGA, they mean Mahwa, make America white again. And they can't do that. The birth rate's down. And so that's why the battle against abortion, it ain't all about the Christian right. It's all about how do we regain some control, because all through history, we have controlled this issue. In immigration policies, if you go back and study them, there was a point in which there was a different quota put on people from African nations being allowed to come into this country as opposed to Europeans.
Yeah. And go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say also his executive orders are, I don't know the numbers yet, but I would venture to guess it's going to disproportionately affect black workers because a lot of us have federal or state jobs. There's a significant proportion of us, There was an argument that was made by, I think it was Keith Boynton in Word and Black. He mentioned that black people gravitated towards state or city or federal jobs because they knew at least there they had some protection against the discrimination that was rampant in private corporations. So there's that.
Well, let's go back with that a little bit, because in the 1870s, when the civil service system was established, you see, the people that the Trumpers are going after right now, those are people that are at the GS-15 and SEC levels above. Most of the black people that are in government are in GSs 1 through 7, 8, or 9. And within each of those grades, there are steps that are there, as I call pacifiers, so that you might work for 15 years trying to get a GS 8, but if you're a GS 7, step 9 in the GS 7 will be equivalent to step 1 in the GS 8, but they're not going to give you the GS 8 because when they start calculating your Social Security benefits, is based on the 3 years, your highest earning 3 years. Mm-hmm. And if you got 3 years of highest earning, you ain't got to worry about the rest if you got your quarters. Mm-hmm. And so they're not even worried about all of that, because if they can control at the top, they'll be able to put the people in to ease those folks out.
Yeah.
And one of the things is what you had said, you don't know how many executive orders to date. He has done 64 executive orders. When he was in office before, his total for his 4 years were 220. compared to Joe Biden when he was in. He had 162 executive orders. And so in his first less than 100 days, he has already got to almost half of what he did in his whole 4 years when he was there before.
And watch my words. I bet he's just setting up this whole narrative that some people are going to buy hook, line, and sinker about he's like the Great White Hope. That's what I call him. He's the Great White Hope, and he's putting forth this image of him fixing everything. He's in charge. He's hard and tough, which we know he's not. I don't see him as a strong man at all. He's like playing some kind of role from The Apprentice, but he's setting us them up to think that he's got the answers.
And the thing I think overall is that America has always been enamored with celebrities and movie stars and people that they think have influence and prestige. The sad thing about it at the end of the day is he said that they're not going to give additional funding for electric cars and electric stations and everything else. And I would think that Elon Musk would be like, hold on, wait a minute, brother, you hurt my bottom line now. And so I'm really looking to see what's really going to take place because, again, he's like all the subsidies or the opportunities for you to get tax write-offs. He said, no, we ain't going to do that no more. You buy your electric car, but that's on y'all. He said, drill, baby, drill.
Just the fact that he had him in the Oval Office to begin, I just couldn't even believe my eyes when I saw that.
Again, you got to look at the plan. I'm sorry I really never learned to be a great chess player. But here's the great plan. The pardons were necessary to create the unofficial army of do anything for Trump. And so they're laying in wait, stand back and stand down. Mm-hmm. They're laying in wait for when they become active and they start the violence part. And that's going to be the reason for bringing the troops in. And that's why you need a Heglich in there to be able to bring the troops when the time comes. So it's orchestrated. Trump knows that he has only about 18 months at the max because the backlash that's building among the white folks now, based on the letters that are being read that people are writing to their white senators about Musk, those people many of them are going to be at risk of being kicked out of office. And Trump's not going to be able to save them because we've already seen him fail to save those whites who were loyal to him in past elections. Mm-hmm. And so he's got 2 years and he needs to do it all in 100 days. If he can keep going the way he is, poor white America will feel like it's on the path for empowerment again, okay? Because the whole idea is if there's enough laxity coming down from the top that shows that we ain't about being fair anymore, then people are going to be more comfortable with what they call us and how they respond to us. Today, Trump issued a statement that said the Department of Education must close immediately. He does not have the authority to close the Department of Education. The Department of Education was created in 1979 by Jimmy Carter. And before we had the Department of Education, it was the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare. So HHS and education were lumped together, and they got separated, all right? And so what's going to happen then? You already have you got subtleties going. For instance, alcohol, tobacco, and firearms control cigarettes because cigarettes have the government seal on it in terms of tax. And the same way each bottle of liquor does. So what's been done in recent years is that cigarettes were taken out of alcohol, tobacco, and firearms and moved into health and human services. And hence we have a battle over flavor and brand cigarettes and nicotine and all that. Everything that's taking place is a part of a larger orchestrated plan. And most of us today, unlike our foreparents, see, this is what I love about black people in the South, man. They used to sit down at the end of the day and read the newspaper. They read the newspaper and they knew what was going on. They sat by the radio. In my hometown in North Carolina, at 5 o'clock every day for almost 100 years, this this old white guy came on and he did the news every day. And he was connected to the newspaper there, the Daily Dispatch. And so this is what people kept up with. Now, what's happened today? If you don't want to get into cable and you nearly don't want to be bothered with the networks because you figure they're not doing anything, then just turn to Entertainment Tonight instead of the news.
Yeah.
Okay, and so you're getting a whole socialized picture of stuff that's really not important to how the rest of the world works.
Well, I always say entertainment is the opiate of the people now,
Yes,
right?
it always has
Entertainment,
been.
right?
Yes, it is. That's a
Because
good way. It's the
good
opiate of the
distraction.
masses.
It's to anybody who's trying to do something to the American people that they don't want them to know about, they're glad for the distraction and they're glad for a populace that's not fully educated. I was in the trenches in education, so I know I've seen it. So yeah, I was trying to pull up the post that I had seen on LinkedIn about the Cincinnati, Ohio
Oh
incident.
yeah, OHIO.
Well, it was this white supremacist group had put a banner on a freeway overpass that said America is for white men and it had a swastika and skull and bones and some other things.
Yeah,
And, the black community came out and protested. And apparently, one of the local law enforcement officials said that they didn't break any laws. So I'm watching that situation, but they've already gotten the permission. So it's a stand by and stand back and stand by.
But that person who made the statement was right, as painful
Yeah.
as it was, because the First Amendment protects the freedom of speech. And under the First Amendment, when you mention the swastika, there was a time when the Nazi Party in this country was renting elementary schools to hold their meetings. And people were objecting because they didn't want to see the swastika flying outside of school. But they had a legal right to do so because of freedom of speech.
Well, one of the black attorneys who was on that case there said something about it's federal property, the freeway overpass. So there may be some truth
It's true.
that it's illegal.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think that we have to just look at the whole full setup of what we talked about up until the election, after the election. I still almost think that we still have to think that Elon Musk and his cronies had something to do with the votes and fixing
Yeah.
machines and everything.
Yeah.
But that would have been a Donald Trump argument. So we're not going to make that argument.
Right,
We're just
right.
going to move forward with that. But just think about Project 25. We spent a lot of time talking about that, but we're not paying attention to the people that he has added to his cabinet that co-authored Project 25.
Yes.
Russell Vulch
Mm-hmm.
is now a part of leading the Office of Management and Budget.
And he was a deputy director of Project 2025.
Yeah.
Right.
Peter Navarro, a convicted felon, is now been added to the team.
Where did they get Peter? We remember Peter running around here, San Diego, trying to be mayor, trying to be everything for all people, as confused as he ever was, and he's still confused.
Yeah, and they have him serving as senior counsel for trade and manufacturing.
That's what he wanted. Yep.
And then you got Paul Akins, that is going to be leading Security and Exchange Commission. It goes on and on, but everybody that was a part of the Project 21 are all getting
25.
positions within the Trump administration so that they can push Project 21 on
25.
all 25, excuse me, 25 on all levels. And I
Yeah.
think that we have to be very mindful that this is not, and you got to kind of give them a little credit that although it seems so far-fetched and so far out there, the game plan, they're executing it just like that football game when everybody thought for sure that the Chiefs were going to win and the Eagles came and dismantled their whole entire offense, defense, and everything else. The reality is if we're not careful, we're going to see that same dismantling of the United States of America, and it will no longer be Make America Great Again. It will be called the Kingdom.
Yeah, that's right.
Of America.
I was just saying to Dr.
Yeah.
Warren that if he could be king tomorrow, this man in the office of the president right now, presidency, he would do it. But it's just, I
Well,
have
see,
to just,
that's
okay.
what's so important about history. Today is the birthday of Abraham Lincoln, okay? And if you think back to, I used to get upset about the President's Day in February, but George Washington stepped down after the second term because he did not want the country to have a king, all right? And to show you how America has changed in terms of 360, back there, I guess following Nixon, Rockefeller had always wanted to be president with all the money he had. And even his offsprings, one of his sons, I guess it was, went to West Virginia and became governor. And an analysis was done of the elections. Each time he got elected in West Virginia, they charted out how many hundreds of dollars he spent per each person of voting age in the state in terms of buying the election. Okay, so let us remember that after Agnew, Rockefeller became vice president briefly, but America was still so sure that it didn't want wealth controlling. Now we've gone from democracy to oligarchy, and wealth is all over the place. And most people never know, don't even remember. Most people don't know about the Gettys or what happened with them, or all of the stuff that was done in this country in terms of who even started philanthropy. They didn't start philanthropy just because they woke up feeling sorry for the masses.
Right.
It was a business move. Okay, and so because of social media, we don't read anymore. Senator Klobuchar from Minnesota, 2 years ago, she wrote a phenomenal book as a lawyer on antitrust and how it's being dismantled. Trump is out to dismantle all of those kinds of rules, anything that stands in the way in terms of people making money. He's out to change. And we're not going to benefit. We're just going to get the tax increases that go with it.
Yeah. And one of the things about it, I'm not going to do it on this show, but I am going to do a show that actually talks about the Antichrist because, I'm
This
just
is
saying
straight
that,
out of Revelation.
we could spend all day on there and start lining up and seeing some similarities. Let's finish off the show today. What's coming up in Black History Month, especially here in the city of San Diego, and let's talk about the issue, the newspaper editions that you all are going to be doing this month.
Well, we have a list of Black History events, and the last two issues will have one more list for the remainder of February in our next issue next week as well. And we also have the list of events online, so that's a resource for all of you. And we have some educational pieces related to Black History Month and the theme this year, which is labor, Black labor. So please definitely look for that. Anything you want
Well,
to add,
I
Dr.
think
Warren?
one of the most important things is not in the paper, it's going to be online. There's a movement underway to make February 28th, which is the last day of this month, a day on which Black people keep their wallets closed. Don't spend, don't buy anything on February 28th, and to make it a national movement that we keep. And I'm encouraging us to stay away from terms like boycotts that stir up old memories and give fuel to hatred. All we have to do, I keep telling folks, and maybe this is going to help make it, because they're talking about a DEI boycott. We don't need to use the term boycott. All we need to do is understand that there are three things that white or corporate America, which is basically white America, three things they fear. They fear lost profits, they fear bad publicity, and they fear a vote cast against their interests. And just like we've seen Elon Musk's stock drop from $358 billion, 63% drop down to $42 billion.
Tesla.
Tesla, because of people responding and getting rid of their Tesla products and a whole bit. This is what America understands. And that means, we ought to look real closely at people like McDonald's and Target and Walmart. You know, there was a time that Walmart was the biggest game in town, but it's not anymore. I mean, because even as big as Walmart is and Amazon on a global scale, uh, Weiwei in China is bigger than both of them, and everything has gone global, and so we need to uh, zip the pocketbook, and have some discipline. I've shared that it has been documented that if there are 10 uh, nations in the world that have the GDPs that make up the wealth of the world, the amount of money that black people spend each year would make us number 11 on that scale. And yet we just spend without control. So if we can give up the Big Mac and we can abandon this one's for you and we can stay out of Target and if we can move away from Walmart, if we can give up, the fried chicken and the Fritos and the whole thing. And maybe some of us need to go back and hear the last poets in terms of why the revolution will not be televised. And you won't catch it with fried chicken hanging from your mouth or evening TV.
And it also is not just avoiding those companies and perhaps frequenting the ones who haven't rolled back DEI. It's supporting Black-owned businesses. That's majorly important, too.
Yeah, so someone said, enough about what we can't do, what can we do? And this is what we can do. We, one, can reroute our dollars and make sure that they are rotating with African-American businesses more than just one time. Many times our dollars don't even hit Black businesses, or it only hits it once before it leaves our community, whereas in other populations, they do have 3 and 4 times that dollar rotates within their community. Dr. Warren?
I'm concerned because whoever that person was that says enough about what we can't do. We were not sitting here saying what we can't do. You weren't listening. We were sitting here identifying what the issues are so you will know what you can do. Wanting to act without knowing how to act is ridiculous. You just as well not act at all. And see, that's the problem. We got people who don't want to listen long enough, don't want to join and be collective. We got through civil rights because we did it collectively. We got through segregation because we did it collectively. Because whatever we did, we understood it was a reflection on all of us and not just on me, myself, and I. And so first you need to do is drop the can't thing and see if you're going to get with the program in terms of what you can do.
Well, the educational moment is that many times we don't talk enough about the issue, so people don't have the education on it. And so tonight we were given education of what's taking place. And, as we move forward, we talk about certain things that we can do. One is come together. And one of the informational pieces that Dr. Warren you gave tonight is that if we were to measure how much money African American people spend in the economy, we would be the 11th largest economy in the world based on the amount of money that we earn as well as spend. And so we need to understand that power and how that power can make an impact. Dr. Warren, with the Montgomery boycott, we're not using the word boycott, but with the Montgomery boycott, you're absolutely right. It wasn't that they were walking, it was that they financially impacted the whole industry, and it was basically at the grounds of shutting down, and they realized that we got to make a change because we're losing money.
And the people who did it, they paid a personal price. They didn't have big jobs. They were the cooks and the maids and the gardeners, and the white folks were putting pressure on them because they didn't have other jobs that they could go to. But they shared what they had with each other so that they could make it work. And see, that's the key. We are still wasting money on fashions. We're wasting money. Look what's happened. Since the pandemic, prices have gone up. Why are we now spending $7.50 for a fish sandwich at Burger King that used to cost $2? Why are we spending money for a bag of potato chips that's half full when it's not healthy in the first place? A box of cereal that's more air than cereal, but we're not complaining. as the portions shrink and the price expand, as opposed to us. And let us not even forget chocolates in terms of it. I mean, I was having a chocolate issue one day, and I had to stop at a gas station to get a candy bar because of my diabetics. And I ended up spending $6 for a Snicker.
Well, can I say this, and I'm gonna get Dr. Warren. All of these things, like somebody said, egg prices, you have to pay this amount, but I said, not me, because I'm not eating eggs. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
You know, it's not a necessity in my life. Now, there are eggs and other products that you do, but, you know, just to go out and buy an egg, I'm like saying, well, we're going to have grits. We got them in the freezer already. But here's the key, is that when times get rough, and this is what, as African Americans, this is what we've been very good at. For the Super Bowl, you know when you want your wings, and, you know, you go to Wingstop, you go here to... Me and my wife said, you know what? We're not going to spend no money. We're gonna go ahead and make our own wings. Mm-hmm. And I got in there with Chef Boyardee. I sauteed my wings and I put them in the air fryer. And then I tossed them in different sauces. And my wife said, well, we're not going to go out to no chicken no more. We got it right here.
There you go.
It's really about, excuse me, us going back to our creativity.
Yeah.
Yes.
And also our resourcefulness.
Right.
And spending money where we are valued and respected and loved, you know?
Because I like to remind us that, you know, 80 years ago, we didn't have as much, but we did more. Mm-hmm. My grandfather worked as a waiter for 40 years on a train, and yet he bought his own home. And places like Atlanta, where black folks were cooks and maids and stuff, and yet they owned property. Mm-hmm. They owned Fulton. They built up what they owned because they were working wisely with what they had. Mm-hmm. Okay?
Yeah. And even in the sense of fashion and impressing people and things of that nature, you know, the one thing that we have when you say, what can we do? We are the creation of swag. We are the creation
That's right.
of fashion. And so instead of us, like I said, I don't have a Louis Vuitton. You know what I'm saying?
Who needs Louis?
Because my whole thing is that I'm not going to advertise for you, Louis.
No.
So
right.
whatever I
Seriously.
do rock, I rock it well. And that's what we've been known for. Whereas we had patches on jeans because we were trying to cover up holes. And then all of a sudden somebody said, oh, that's nice. Let's make it a fashion statement. And then we went from patching up gear to paying $200 and $300 for something that we were doing just as a necessity.
Oh, but Leonard, let's tell people how they got the jeans raggedy. Mm-hmm. They went down in the basement. Mm-hmm. They hung the jeans up against a brick wall, mm-hmm. and they got shotguns mm-hmm. and took buckshots, and they shot holes in the jeans to make them raggedy and then sold them for more than the...
And watch this, Dr. Warner, they call them distressed jeans.
Yeah.
I would be distressed, too, if you hung me up in the basement and a shotgun shot at me.
Okay, but we just have 1 minute left. So I did want to say that another thing that we can do, which we were going to get to, is to call and write your congressman, your representative. We're going to have a list of all those people in the paper so that there's that proactiveness that we can do, but also know the issues, educate yourself on what's happening. And for me personally, I have to take a deep breath before I look at the news now because it's very distressing. Mm-hmm. But I know I've got to just power through it because I can't ignore it and just turn on Dancing with the Stars or whatever because we're in a crisis moment here, and I feel like people are too calm, honestly.
Well, Latanya, you and I are so much alike because we get up so early in the morning
right.
and turn on the news and we be getting fresh. But like, oh my Jesus, that happened we just only slept for 3 hours and now this has happened.
So
Well,
scary.
I want to say, because this program is heard around the country and around the world, I just want to tell people that the black media, the press, the radio, television, we're the trusted messenger. And what you need to do in this time is make sure that people you do business with are doing business with us.
That's right.
Because one of the things this president is doing, he is trying to cancel out the support for the press. He's kicked mainstream press out of the Pentagon. He's canceled contracts with Politico and the New York Times, and he's trying to set us up to go back and revisit New York Times v. Sullivan, which will make liable suits more available against papers. And so even in San Diego, if you're spending money with people, Are they spending money with us to reach you?
Look at the advertisements.
Okay.
That'll
Because
tell
if
you.
they spend money with us, then we can hire more of us
Yeah.
to work. And don't wait until you have a crisis to come to us.
Yeah.
Okay? That's the key.
Well, with that being said, we have spent far past our time. This is from the desk of the editor. We do appreciate you tuning in on a weekly basis, and we are so excited that our managing editor is with us tonight. Dr. Warren, I think that she's the one of the missing ingredients. We this time just flew by so fast because there was a third person jumping in. I kind of liked it.
Oh, yeah, I think it's great. Matter of fact, next program, I might just stay home and listen to her.
Well, I think that we got the Trinity going on right here. I think we should keep it up.
Yeah.
But I want to say consistently, thank you for your comments. Thank you for tuning in, and stay tuned. Make sure that you download the app for God Radio, and also for the San Diego Voice and Viewpoint. Make sure that you read and get the latest edition that is coming out. We're so excited to continue to work together, and great dialogue and great opinions will always help us. If you want your voice to be heard, please send your letters to the desk, not the desk, but to the San Diego Voice and Viewpoint. And many times those are read and then they're posted, so your opinion is not only just heard, but it's actually seen by many, many more people.
So let's make every day Valentine's Day among ourselves.
Yes.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Happy Valentine's